This is the Logistics Viewpoints podcast. If you're still running your supply chain on static plans, siloed systems, and last month's data, you're already behind. This podcast breaks down what's actually changing, not the hype, the architecture, the operating model, and the decisions that separate leaders from everyone else. We cover the full operating landscape: supply chain, energy, sustainability, connected vehicles, and the systems that tie them together. This is what matters and what works, and what to do next. This is the Logistics Viewpoints podcast.
My name is Gavin Simon, and today I'm joined by Jeremy Hudson. Jeremy, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Gavin. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just obviously want to say thank you so much for participating in yesterday's session. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I felt like we got into a really good conversation, but before we touch those topics, let's hear about you, and I want to hear more about OpenSky Group and your role with them.
Yeah, so fun story, right? I actually got my start in the industry when I was 19 years old.
Okay.
Here, I'll actually go into a little bit more detail because I think it's a really fun story, right? So I accidentally applied for a job as a temp in a warehouse. Didn't mean to. I had a buddy that was making more money than me, and I said, "Hey, I want to do that. Where do I go to apply?" So I went and applied for a job at a temp agency accidentally. They called me 2 days later and said, "Do you know how to drive a golf cart?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can drive a golf cart. I can do that." And so yeah, they called me, asked if I could drive a golf cart. I showed up, and I was delivering cups to the different stands at the State Fair of Texas.
Oh, okay, got you.
Which is the best job I've ever had.
Because you're on a golf cart.
Yeah, and so I actually had my own trailer full of cups, and I had a golf cart, and I would route my deliveries, and I would fill my orders onto my golf cart, and then I'd go deliver my orders to my customers at these different corn dog stands and fried s'mores and all the other fried food you could imagine.
Yes.
That was my very first job in logistics, and haven't found one better since then. No offense to my current employers or coworkers, but it was just the best. So much free food and everything. So anyways, that was my start. From there, I started working in that same company's warehouse, a company called Expedex, a subsidiary of International Paper. Worked my way up through the warehouse, supervisor, manager, etc. Dabbled in procurement for a few years because I thought I'd rather sit in a cubicle. That was horribly boring. So I said, never mind. No offense to procurement people. And then worked at DHL Supply Chain for a couple of years in the logistics space doing labor management work. So really, really interesting industry there. And then started at OpenSky 10 years ago, 10 and a half now, as an entry-level consultant, and then worked my way up to vice president of client services. So I oversee project teams now. I've got about 8 ongoing projects at any given time, implementing extremely complicated warehouse management, transportation management software. And so that's what I do on the day-to-day now. But yeah, it all started on a golf cart and worked my way up from there.
Is there any similarities from, I guess, like your beginning days within, like, let's say at that job, or like maybe the job following that with your role now, or is there any big lessons learned from back then?
It's all just picking up stuff and putting it back down, right? Let's face it. And so I think that even today, it's about finding the simplest and most efficient and most effective way to pick something up and put something down. That's all logistics is. Might be oversimplifying a little, right? But yeah, that brings me to OpenSky Group. That's what we do. We implement software and help companies do logistics.
What softwares are you implementing?
So it varies. We partner with Blue Yonder. We also partner with SAP for EWM implementations. And we do work in the Manhattan space. We do work in the generic solo chain space as well as the Infio space. And so, yeah, we have dabbled across the different tier 1 WMS solutions. But we spend a lot of our time in the Blue Yonder space specifically. And a lot of our expertise is in that space.
Okay, interesting. I guess I want to ask you, where do you see the WMS software space heading into?
Yeah.
Would you say it's leading into like integrating AI capabilities and also like robotics and automation? Do you find like that's like a major, I guess like something that's going to be coming down in the future, or do you find that like maybe there's a disconnect between like what's currently happening in warehouses in America today and like this robotic talk?
Yeah, so I guess let's take that in two different answers, right?
Okay, cool.
And let's start on the AI side.
Okay.
Right? I would say warehousing in this is kind of a treacherous statement, but warehousing has been very late to the AI trend, especially after attending a show like this and hearing what's being done in manufacturing. And, if you look at what's being done in like freight brokerage, freight brokerage has been revolutionized by the use of AI and automation, right? However, there is no AI technology that's going to make picking something up and putting something down any more efficient than what it currently is, right? The actual physical act.
Right.
And so I would say warehousing has been relatively late to the AI trend
Right.
and the AI space because there's simply less to gain from it overall. However, right, if you look at the importance of decision making in warehousing and leveraging a WMS, AI has an immense impact and can have an even broader impact. At OpenSky Group, we are implementers of AI technology, and we have our own AI solutions that help with decision making in the warehouse and making those decisions more effectively. I kind of use the analogy, and hopefully this is useful for your audience, right? Imagine if you used to plan your golf trips without a weather forecast, without knowledge of tee times, without reviews of those courses, without any online capabilities, right? What would it have been like to plan a golf trip and make that decision? It's laden with risk, right? Because you could show up and it could rain. You could show up and it'd be too crowded. You could show up and the course be horrible, right? Now we make those decisions with so much information and input that it's almost a certainty. When you arrive at that golf course, you know exactly what you're going to get and you know exactly how your experience is going to be. Well, the decisions that supervisors are making in warehouses are very much like the olden days of making a tee time at a golf course. Most of our supervisors in warehouses are making decisions that are laden with risk because they don't have all the information that would make those decisions easier. And so, where we see AI having a massive impact in the logistics space is giving them those inputs that they currently don't have, right? And making those available to them. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. And we're super excited about how it can be leveraged. And so that's where we see AI in warehousing. But admittedly, there's places to go there with that. Right now, let's talk about where innovation will lead to significant savings in warehousing, which is the robotics space, right? And so I would say when I started at OpenSky 10 years ago, maybe 10% of our projects had automation. Right? Robotics, automation, conveyance, et cetera, right? Maybe 10%. Right now of my ongoing projects, I would say 75% of them have an automation component, right? Whether that's ASRSs or conveyance or AMRs or AGVs, cobots, you name it. There is automation across the landscape right now. Because one, it's gotten a lot cheaper to implement. Two, we simply don't have the workforce available to us, and that's going to continue to decline. We are reaching a cliff in our workforce availability, right? And it is absolutely imperative that companies implement technology to augment the use of humans in our logistics centers, right? And so we are seeing automation play a huge role. And there will be a point where the AI and that robotics and automation intersect. But quite honestly, we still need to mature in the robotics space. Like that's still something that's relatively new. I know a lot of my projects are doing it, but they're just starting to take their first bite at that apple. And so, there's a lot of revolutionary things happening in that specific space. I think 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to be talking a lot more about how to make warehouses work with their current set of robotic and automation solutions than making them work with human-based activities.
So in terms of the future of warehouses and logistics, I know we talked about a little bit yesterday about automation and robotics. Do you find that that's kind of where the warehouse space is leading? And how do you think the solutions out there on the market are playing into the future developments of robotics and automation in warehouses?
Yeah, so the vast majority of everything we're implementing right now is still collaborative with humans, right? I mean, for those out there that are scared that they're going to be entirely replaced by a robot, that's not happening yet, right? And even I was reading something earlier today by a major industry power that said, listen, humanoids are a long way from being implemented in mass, right? And so what we see is, yes, processes are becoming more efficient. for humans because robotics are cutting down on things like travel, right? They're making warehouses safer. Humans are traveling less, right? Their jobs are becoming simpler. Product comes to them. They don't have to go to the product, that type of thing, right? And so that's still what we're seeing in the space. Now, I do think AGVs and self-driving forklifts, right, are probably the next big inflection point in warehousing automation, but they're simply not operating at the speed that's effective yet. I mean, and don't get me wrong, we could re-record this in a year and that could be an entirely different answer because that's how quickly the space is moving. But right now, a reach truck that's entirely self-operating is probably a 2 mile per hour average speed versus 7 miles per hour, what you would get with a human. So, are we seeing that warehouses are operating in hours they wouldn't normally be operating? Not necessarily. Are they operating with a few less people? Yes, because we have made more efficient travel, more efficient processes in the warehouse. But I would say it's not replacing humans en masse at this point.
And yesterday I was in my colleague Patrick Arnold's session, and Boston Dynamics was in there with like the Spot robot. And beyond just like, I guess like the techie side of the robots and stuff like that, and robots doing backflips, one of the things yesterday in terms of the humanoid robots is the ability for this robot to pick up a large amount of weight. I guess there was this like use case of this robot picking up a washer machine and like moving it over. And that was not something that like they did out of like thin air. That was because they had seen a human being with a harness on, I guess like picking up washer machines or something like that. I don't know the original context, but just from that statement, I feel like robotics and automation or just robotics specifically is kind of a safety issue as well. It's like reducing the amount of risk put on humans in terms of like carrying and like all of that, like that pressure that you're putting on like the human body over and over throughout the day. And I think that's where everyone can kind of agree upon is like, this is also a safety play as well as an efficiency play.
Yeah, and it's no different from what we saw in assembly lines over the last 100 years, right? I mean, if you look at the risks and the human, toll that was taken by putting together a car in the course of time versus where we are now with the mechanization that's happened there, it's no different than the benefits we'll see in warehousing, right? We will see significant benefits in redundant tasks that lift, tedious amounts of weight, things of that sort. And so, no, I mean, I think there's going to be improvements in how strenuous warehousing positions are. I mentioned that my first role was with a company distributing cups, but their warehouse was distributing paper, and I was lifting 70-pound cases of paper, which I know obviously I'm a very strong man, and that's the first thing that your viewers and listeners will obviously, that'll be their takeaway. And so it was no problem for me personally, but my coworkers really struggled with those, right? And so, I mean, obviously automation in that space would be great for the toll that it's taking on humans.
Okay, so I know I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but my background's in sustainability, and I'm obviously very passionate about that. And for me, I find that there's so many places within the industry and my research that like sustainability and supply chain have a natural overlay. We want things to be more efficient. We want to reduce waste. We want to reduce travel time because that reduces the amount of fuel used, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of warehouses, where do you think like the biggest sustainability impacts can be implemented? Like where can we reduce the amount of waste, reduce the amount of materials used in terms of packaging? I feel like today, in terms of Gen Z, everyone's obsessed with packaging, and I'm like, babes, it's a cardboard box. So I'll give you the mic.
Yeah, no, and it's funny where this series of topics has gone. We started with all the buzz terms, right? We started with AI and automation, right? And so your audience just completely fled. We can't talk about warehousing and sustainability. That's not a hot topic anymore, right?
We're still here. I'm still here.
Yeah, and personally, the two of us can at least agree that there's huge advantages to becoming more sustainable, right? And not listen, for my sake, it's because I'd like the planet to stabilize, and I'd like to see less climate events, and I'd like to see better weather and more predictable weather, and I'd like for further generations to enjoy the planet that I've enjoyed, right? So I'll say that. But for the executives listening, it also can save you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Which is important to emphasize. And so a few places, right? One, I think, I've talked a lot about warehousing and WMS technology, but same thing with transportation management,
Right.
fuel consumption, rationalization of electrical vehicle fleets, right? There's so much opportunity in implementing that type of technology. I mean, just reduction in fuel costs, simplification of routes, the way that product is delivered to customers, the way we route that product to customers.
Right.
There's huge benefit in looking at fuel reduction there, transportation reductions, right? Congestion reductions in our roads, right? I mean, if I can create less traffic, that's less carbon emissions for everybody.
Right.
And if we adopted more technology in that space, it would be extremely beneficial, right? Another one being packaging. Like you said, it's just a box. The problem is the box is 4 times the size it needs to be to hold your product, or it could be stored in an envelope instead, right? There's amazing technology out there, both in WMSs and in bolt-on technologies that can do legitimate cartonization, rationalize a case size, rationalize an envelope size, and cut down on the number of vehicles that are delivering those oversized packages, which once again reduces emissions, reduces congestion on roads, right? And creates a simpler, more sustainable world for us. Warehouse, I mean, just to kind of take it a step further, warehouses are big structures with blank canvases on their roofs, and
Able to hold the solar panel.
So I had an awesome client a few years ago put solar panels across their entire warehouse, and it created basically a neutral environment for energy.
Were they
creation.
using that energy on site, or were they giving it back to
on
the grid?
site,
Okay.
right? And so it was a really, really cool contribution to creating a more carbon neutral environment, right? And so there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, just travel reduction and the way that our reach trucks and our forklifts and everything else are traveling our warehouse floors. I mean, I've seen warehouses that their forklifts are operating twice the amount they need to because they're not rationalizing their travel and batching their work correctly. And so, I mean, it's everywhere you look, and every single one of those things, aside from maybe the solar panels, everything else I've mentioned is a bottom line savings, just an efficiency of a process. And so there's plenty of meat on that bone, right? It's just a matter of folks taking that seriously. And, maybe if we stuck AI in front of that, it would attract a little bit more attention because that's where the budgets are, right? But yeah, I'd love to see us become a lot more environmentally conscious in the warehousing and transportation space.
I agree. And I'm going to pose this question from a Gen Z perspective. Obviously, there's a lot of conversations about warehouses and the employees within warehouses and the, the downturn in terms of employee retention. And that's in terms of the types of jobs within warehouses. And there's obviously a WMS play here with how they are utilizing their labor, how efficient their labor is, which obviously nobody wants to be paying for labor there's no labor being done, which is totally understandable. But there's also this large conversation and fear being implemented around the future projections of labor shortages and how that will impact warehouses. Do you think that there is a way that we could reimagine a job within the warehouses that would keep employees retained, would maybe attract younger generations to want to work in warehouses? And do you think that maybe that there's an automation play or a robotics play there? Or I know it's a tough question, but I think it's very topical in terms of warehouses.
And it's near and dear to my heart because I'll remind you, I started in the warehouse, right? And there's a huge, negative connotation around warehouse workers and warehouse work, and that hasn't gone away. While I'm very happy to report that pay has increased in the warehouse, luckily, right? And those jobs have become much more valuable, which is great, right? The connotation around the quality of work that's done or the quality of worker in a warehouse is unfortunately not where it should be, right? These are extremely high contributing roles, right? And so I think there are a few things that could be done. One, warehouse modernization, right? I think creating places that are fun to work in, creating places that are modern, right? So many of our warehouses are neglected, behind the times, right? So I can tell you that more automation in warehouses does lead to longer tenures for your employees. We've seen that. That's statistically proven at this point, right? And so creating a place that's, even better lighting, better working conditions.
It's so true.
It sounds ridiculous, but you want to walk into something modern, high tech. You want to feel like you're contributing in that type of environment. This is no different than Google attracting employees when their offices were cooler than everybody else's, right? And so I think having that mentality, I mean, I've even seen vast improvements in a break room, right? And I mean, just like creating a fun environment to work. And so I think there are companies that are catching on to that and creating that, right? Which is great. And so I think that's one piece. And I think another piece, and again, this is something that we're working on at OpenSky, finding a way that software can highlight your contributions, right? And not in kind of a ploy, right? But actually rationalizing how many orders you've contributed to that day, how many customer orders you've satisfied, how many customers you've touched by your contributions alone, right? Giving employees insights to, you managed to fulfill enough orders today to fill a Boeing 737, right? Giving relatable kind of examples of this is how much you're contributing to our company by the role that you're fulfilling. I think providing that insight to employees is going to be extremely beneficial, right? And there's nothing that can be lost by that. And so I think that highlighting employee contributions, creating more comfortable and modern workspaces are steps in the right direction.
That's perfect. I really appreciate that. I think and those were not even like these like crazy hard, challenging feats. I think any human being wants to work in an environment that is inviting and wants to keep you there, because at the end of the day, there's human beings spending 8 hours doing a job, and like they wants to be in an inviting space. So I really appreciate that. And I think just even in our conversation today, we've touched on so many different topics that are within the warehouse industry and logistics industry, which we talked about a little bit during my session. And I guess I want to give you like the mic in terms of like yesterday, and was there any highlights or any questions that you liked, or was there anything from Jared's presentation about Avantor that you enjoyed? And that can be the final question that we can close out with.
Yeah, and thank you for that opportunity. I think that, you know, what's become obvious here at the show this year and sitting in different sessions is, you know, AI and the industrialization of AI in this space, it's not plug and play, right? You're not just going to go, it's not like your Chat GPT in your browser where you can just, you know, go ask it any question and it does stuff, right? What we're finding is industrialized AI, it's not a plug and play environment. There is design required, there's training required of the AI itself, right? And that's been obvious in all the presentations. And so it's a matter of identifying the problems in your business that you want to solve. This isn't rocket science, right? And then training an AI tool to help with that. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. The warehouse is ripe for those opportunities. I mean, I think that looking at a warehouse, understanding the pressure that's on the decisions that are being made in that production critical environment. This isn't a matter of, oh, you bought too much stuff. This is, we've got to get orders out the door. Like this impacts a customer today, right now. This person paid extra for next day shipping and you've got to figure out how to fulfill that.
And we've all been there waiting for that package the next day.
And AI isn't prevalent enough in that space right now. And our applications are falling short, right? The advancements of the applications in the warehouse are falling short. It's become very expensive and there are alternatives out there. And so that's where we're excited to help people from an OpenSky Group perspective, is understanding how you can leverage tools that are in the marketplace today that are cost effective. You don't have to break the bank, right? That will help those poor, stressed out individuals that are making these decisions with far less inputs than they should have, right? Let's figure out how to help those folks and make your warehouses more effective in the process.
Yesterday, I was really struck by your statement in terms of, obviously there's solutions that can do 1 to 100 of things in like the most like high tech spaces, but there's also customers in dire need of just like your basic necessities and getting you from like 1 to 25 or 1 to 50. And I really appreciated like that pragmatic approach in terms of like, you still need to fulfill the needs of customers that are at your like mid-tier level.
Yes, if you know, and I understand your audience is a lot larger than those that deal with just warehousing, right? But for those that don't deal a lot with warehousing, let me just make one statement clear. We're not all Amazon, right? I mean, their warehouses are incredible and highly automated and they have all kinds of tool sets, but I can tell you the vast majority of the warehouses that we interact with, right, are still very much trying to figure out their technology stack, and helping to understand how you can incrementally advance those warehouses will make a large change across the industry.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, Jeremy. Thank you so much for attending the forum and participating in my session. This is our latest episode on Logistics Viewpoints, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks.
Thank you.